This is Treasure Planet. Do you remember, before the dark days, when Disney was not a malevolent monopoly of unparalleled, corrupted corporate overlording power that sought to destroy everything good and pure about entertainment culture? Before they bought companies left and right as though they were at an all-you-could-eat buffet for fat fucks, trying their best to get to the finish line of life? Well, I certainly do. That is, of course, if I fall into a state of constant comatose in order to travel back in my memory to the mid and late 2000s. Those were the days. During this long-forgotten creativity, the movie Treasure Planet was released, a financial box office disaster with a development period that lasted almost half a decade. And to this day, Treasure Planet is my favorite animated film of all time. It combines everything good about Captain Jack's Pirates of the Caribbean with George Lucas's Star Wars, and tapped on the head with a bit of Disney magic. You know, before they sold it out to their supreme overlord Satan, aka a purple-haired social justice warrior that would make Holdo look like Abigail Ratchford. And that's saying something. So, let's delve into Treasure Planet and see what golden treats we can find in this gem of a film. So, if you don't know the basic plot, I'll break it down for you, just in case you're 10 months old, a person with chronic short-term memory, or a person who regularly removes their brain cells with frequented visits to the bar. The story is centered around James Pleiades Hawkins, a young angsty teen who just wants to escape into the outside world and not be confined to the house of his mom. Yes, basically he's Luke Skywalker. And just like Luke, Jim's father left him as a kid and never returned. Instead of going out to find his dad, he decides to go to try and find Treasure Planet, a place where a notorious pirate captain, named Captain Nathaniel Flint, left all of his loot. Having been entrusted a map to the place by Billy Bones, Jim and his family friend Dr. Doppler set sail with a Captain Amelia and, of course, their cook, Mr. Silver. The concept for Treasure Planet, which it was called Treasure Island in Space in 1985, was pitched by Ron Clements during the meeting wherein he and John Musker also pitched a very famous Disney film known as The Little Mermaid. The CEO of Disney at the time said, "Nah, I'm not feeling this one, bro." The team that created the space world was well over 1,000 people in the staff. At first, the team wanted the movie to be open, with an older Jim Hawkins narrating the story of, the story of Captain Nathaniel Flint. But it was too dark and too edgy and, I guess, too Zack Snyder for them, so they decided not to go full edgelord. They also wanted a solar surfing scene, and a scene where Jim talks to an alien girl in order to show his sensitive side. Thankfully, the high-tea production team at the time settled for the better solar sailing scene, and I've seen both those scenes, so believe me that they picked correctly this time around.
You give up a few things, chasing a dream.
As I stated earlier, Jim is a young angsty teen who just wants to escape into the outside world. But that's not just it, though. Throughout the film, you see Jim slowly develop into a real, bright, and true man that does the right, responsible things when he needs to. His sheer constant determinism can give any pessimist a boner in predictability. In the ending, spoiler alert, by the way, for a decades-plus-old animated cult classic, Jim gives up his dream of having treasure in order to save his friends, but is given treasure at the end without expecting any, and I'll get into that later, and decides to use said treasure to help his mom run a better and brighter business. He goes to school to be a captain so that he can make his mom proud and make his dad look like the ridiculous, loathsome idiot that he was. As for Dr. Doppler, there's a lot that I could say about him. Whether it is that, for the life of me, I never understood until it was 2011 that he was supposed to be a walking, talking dog furry, or that his voice acting is absolutely spot on, Dr. Doppler is one of the most important characters in Treasure Planet. Perhaps the most interesting thing, besides him trying to be in an interspecial relationship with Captain Amelia, is the fact that at the beginning he is an adult having to take care of a kid. That would be Jim. But by the end, he's become an equal friend and companion, and they work hand in hand in order to escape a hoodlum of homeless alien space pirates who look like they take fashion tips from those ladies at Walmart, who are always being shit on, and rightfully so, for their absolute awful dressed attire that would never see the light of day on an episode of What Not to Wear. Talking about What Not to Wear, by the way, let's talk about a character of the perfect example of what not to become. Silver is definitely one of the most interesting characters within Disney's plethora of long-made animated films. His charisma, which oozes off of him like melted cheese, is definitely something that attracts the audience. Like, well, melted cheese. All ooey and gooey. Anyways, Silver is definitely seen as the villain within the film. Even though another more unsavory mutated crustacean is the true villain, yet even though one could make the conclusion that he is and whether he is or isn't, it doesn't truly matter in the end. Silver is ultimately a very complicated character, seeing as how he has an inner conflict between the things he loves and the people he also loves. And at the end of the film, again, spoilers for a film older than a decade, Silver gives up the only thing that he ever dreamed about, treasure from the treasure trove of Captain Nathaniel Flint, in order to save Jim and then to help him pay for his mom's restaurant that he destroyed, so I guess he's just doing the right thing. Who knew that an aged pirate would become more responsible than some other people that I know of? Now, as for Captain Amelia, could you ever possibly come up with a feline character that is both strong and feminine, and appeals to a certain kink commonly associated with humanoid animals? Well, Treasure Planet sure did, and with Captain Amelia, they did not disappoint. Although Captain Amelia is written as a strong woman, as Disney likes to constantly promote in their ever-increasing in number and decreasing in value films and adaptations, it seems as though the strong feminine character of the frisky feline ship captain is not just agile, brave, and hilarious, but also indescribably smart, and frequently uses long words that would stump any contestant on Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? She's a perfect character, and by the end of the film, and I suppose I'd better stop giving spoilers, but let's just say that she becomes something that modern-day, third-wave, feminazi, blue-haired landwells with armpit hair the size of a Pacific Ocean landfill would not agree with. So, props to good old classic Disney, and not to this modern garbage of a company. As for Ben, there's not much to say about the comic relief of the film, that being a 1,000-year-old pile of junk that talks as much as that bitchy mother-in-law that you have to put up with. There's nothing really much else to say about him. He's a necessary player within the plot, but he is the only detracting part of the film. And lastly, as for Morph, he's the cute part of the film, and he does his job. Yes, he does look like a pink floating flubber, but this little rascal of endless mischievousness is definitely someone that is fun to watch in any and every scene that he is in. Probably the most interesting thing in regards to his character is the fact that Morph seems like a foil for Morph's humanity, or for Silver's humanity, I should say. Some theories believe Morph's friend Silver himself used to be Jim's dad, and that Morph is a replacement in order for Silver to remember his long-lost kid. Depressing, right? Yeah, but not as bad as the current entertainment landscape. Am I right, or am I right?
You got the makings of greatness in you, but you gotta take the helm and chart your own course. Stick to it, no matter the squalls.
There are two major themes within Treasure Planet, and boy are they heavy hitters. It's quite apparent after watching the film for the first viewing experience that the biggest and strongest theme displayed in the overarching story is that of a bond between a father and his son. Never is it seen more apparent than in this scene, where Jim's dad is shown leaving the family for the last time to never return again. This same concept is brought back up again when Jim goes through the film with Silver, a replacement of the father figure. Perhaps the most interesting thing is that Silver ends up betraying Jim and hurting him just like his own father did. The only difference being is that Jim stands up and fights, and in the end, gets that father figure back that he had been asking for and seeking for his whole entire life. As for a second, it can be easily said that Treasure Planet is not exactly a film that appeals widely to a female audience. The main character being a young man who is rowdy and a breaker of laws and codes, undergoing a rigorous task of finding lost treasure, and when he returns, he's a responsible adult that does right things, not because he has to, but because he wants to. Watching this transformation is especially interesting and is definitely a highlight of the film. Jim goes from merely being a person watching the crew on the sidelines to saving the ship and crew twice from fiery infernos.
I am not leaving my buddy, Jimmy! Unless he looks at me like that. Bye, Jim!
Before the film was released in theaters, Treasure Planet was being so supported by the Disney company that a sequel was already in the works, including a completed script as well as its own TV series. Yet the opening week came and went, and with it getting less than $20 million at the box office when the film cost almost $150 million to make, it was obvious from the get-go that it was going to bomb, and therefore all sequels and television series were scrapped. In a way, I'm glad it was never made. At the time, the only successful sequels to get to great Disney films were within the Lilo and Stitch franchise. Also, one of the things that made Treasure Planet truly special was the fact that it was not revolving around a love story. In the sequel that had been planned, it would have done so to poor Jim. For me, if there had to be a sequel, it would need to continue the story of the father and son relationship dynamic. Maybe Jim and Silver have almost become like father and son when Jim's real father shows up. Or maybe Jim finds out that Silver is his father, and that sets tension between the two. Either way, a love story is definitely something that does not seem to be able to fit into a Treasure Planet sequel, and the world will probably never truly know what it would have been like. And perhaps for a 2002 animated cult classic, that's just fine.
But I was going into Tarshin Station to pick up some power converters.
You can waste time with your friends when your chores are done. Come on.
But I was going into Tarshin Station to pick up some power converters.
Luke, on the line.